Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the launch of the Transporter 16 mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. I'm Stephen Young, and I'll be providing commentary for this morning's liftoff. Will Robinson-Smith and the rest of the team are busy preparing for the Artemis II mission at the Kennedy Space Center, so I'll be running this morning's broadcast solo. Taking a quick look over at Launch Complex 39B at the Kennedy Space Center, you can see the Artemis II vehicle, the Space Launch System rocket, and the Orion capsule standing out there before dawn this morning as NASA gets ready to start the countdown for this mission that will take 4 astronauts on a voyage around the moon and back. The Spaceflight Now team will be setting up remote cameras today and performing all our pre-launch tasks to get ready for a live broadcast that will run most of Wednesday, so be sure to tune in for that. We'll also be conducting interviews with NASA and industry officials today at the Space Center. Turning our attention back to Vandenberg Space Force Base, where SpaceX is already fueling the Falcon 9 rocket for this morning's liftoff. T0, the moment of ignition, is scheduled for 4:02 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That's 7:02 on the East Coast and 11:02 UTC for our viewers around the world. As I mentioned earlier, before we came on the air, the launch director authorized the start of propellant load. The launch team at Vandenberg Space Force Base is at the Launch Control Center, which is located about 11 miles north of the pad. They will also have support from SpaceX's teams at Hawthorne, California. The countdown began with that go for propellant load at the T-minus 38-minute mark. The The start of the flow of propellants aboard the Falcon 9's first and second stages began with the loading of kerosene on both stages, along with liquid oxygen on the first stage. With 30 minutes left on the clock, cryogenic helium load begins. The helium's loaded into carbon fiber pressure vessels located inside the rocket's tanks. The helium pressurizes those propellant tanks and keeps the liquids flowing into the Merlin vacuum engines at the bottom of the rocket. Loading starts with the first stage and then continues with the second stage 4 minutes later. Loading of kerosene on the first stage of the vehicle should conclude at the T-minus 23-minute mark, and currently the chill down of the Strongback process is underway. The Strongback at Vandenberg sits alongside the rocket at the launch pad. It's the truss-like structure that we'll see once we start getting images from SpaceX. In addition to providing physical support to the vehicle, it serves as the conduit for propellant lines and air conditioning for the rocket's second stage and the payload fairing containing the Transporter 16 payload. If we could see the launch pad right now, we'd see this chill down process in the form of the so-called big vent. And the cloud of vapor is created as those liquid oxygen lines are cooled before the next major milestone in the countdown, which is the start of liquid oxygen flow through those Strongback structure into the second stage, and that comes at the T-minus 16-minute mark. At T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin first stage engines will get underway. A small amount of liquid oxygen is flowed through the plumbing and turbo pumps of the engines. This cools down the Merlin 1Ds to protect them from thermal shock and damage when propellants really start to flow during the startup sequence, seconds before ignition. About 6 minutes prior to launch, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the Strongback start to retract from the Falcon 9. Prior to this, the pressure will be increased in the propellant tanks to strengthen the structure of the rocket. We should hear a call for that particular procedure. This is conducted because the vehicle will no longer have the physical support that's provided by the Strongback. The Strongback of Vandenberg is a little different from the ones you might be used to at Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center. It will recline to an angle of about 13 degrees and remain in that position at launch. About 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Then around 2 minutes before launch, liquid oxygen loading should be complete on the second stage. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellants. In the final 60 seconds of the countdown, the control of the vehicle will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. And if everything is looking good, the SpaceX launch director will give their final go for liftoff. The engine ignition command comes at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin 1D engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will command the hold-down clamps on the launch pad to release the Falcon 9 for a liftoff at T0, which today is at 4:02 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. We'll be getting live views from SpaceX shortly, so please bear with me while I get that ready to bring into the broadcast. Before we get those live views from SpaceX, let's have a quick look at the trajectory for this mission. The Falcon 9 will lift off from the pad at Space Launch Complex 4 East. Today's mission will take a southerly trajectory, slightly to the west as well, on departure from pad 4 East as it heads to a sun-synchronous orbit. Following stage separation about 2.5 minutes into flight, the first stage will continue downrange to land on SpaceX's West Coast drone ship, named, of course, I Still Love You. If all goes according to plan, the first stage booster will touch down a little more than 8 minutes after launch. The drone ship is stationed about 370 miles downrange. Meanwhile, the upper stage will continue on with the Transporter 16 mission. Now getting live views from SpaceX. A fairly clear view of the pad today. There is some fog in the area, but not affecting the views that we're getting from the cameras at the pad. There's also some high cloud in the area. SpaceX reporting that the weather is indeed green for this morning's planned launch. Take a quick look at the satellite imaging, which does show that high cloud that's in the area. The lighter blue color in this satellite view gives you an idea of the fog, which appears mostly to be further south on the coast, but we do have some reports from people on the ground in the Vandenberg area that there is some local patches of fog as well. But does look like things are looking pretty good visibility-wise at the pad itself. There are 112 payloads aboard this Transporter 16 mission. The majority of those come from two companies, Exolaunch and SeaOps Space. Exolaunch with 57 and SeaOps with 19. There are multiple countries involved in the various CubeSats and small payloads that are being carried to sun-synchronous orbit on this particular mission. Going back to our pad views. SpaceX has launched more than 1,600 payloads on its rideshare programs, Transporter being one of 3 different missions that it offers for rideshare customers. The Transporter missions go to a sun-synchronous orbit. The bandwagon missions go to a mid-inclination orbit. And most recently, the Twilight mission offered a particularly interesting option for its rideshare customers, traveling along the Dawn, the orbital Dawn region of sun-synchronous orbit. We're now hearing from SpaceX on their collision avoidance maneuvers that they use for their Starlink satellites. This mission, obviously, with 112 payloads on board, also requires a lot of orbital work to ensure that there is no possibility of collision. SpaceX stresses how important it is that looks like SpaceX jumping the gun there with their launch vehicle graphics. We just heard the call for engine chill. Let's listen into SpaceX's commentary.
Cargo and people. Starting from the very top of the rocket, we have the payload fairing. The fairing is a protective shell that houses all the payloads, shielding them from aerodynamic heating until the vehicle is outside of Earth's atmosphere. The shape of the fairing contributes to Falcon 9's overall efficiency, helping to reduce drag during flight. And within that fairing is today's payload stack. Here is a photo from midway through the encapsulation operation.
RP1 load is complete.
Just before the fairing halves were closed in preparation for flight. And here's a live view of that payload stack. Once in space, the two fairing halves separate and fall back to Earth, where they will be recovered by our recovery vessel to be refurbished and reused on future flights. Both halves of the fairing are flight proven, with one side flying for its 25th time and the other for its 22nd. And right below the fairing is Falcon 9's second stage, which features a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine. Below the second stage is the black carbon fiber interstage, and inside of that is where the MVAC engine is located. And below that we have the first stage, or booster, which will be fully loaded with about 1 million pounds of liquid oxygen and RP1 rocket-grade kerosene. And that first stage supporting today's mission will be making its 12th flight today. It previously launched the SDA T1TL-B and SDA T1TL-C missions, and 9 Starlink missions. And the first stage makes up the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle and has 9 Merlin M1D engines at the bottom, which generate
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for Strongback retract.
Which generate more than 1.7 million pounds of thrust. In about 2.5 minutes into flight, the first stage will separate and make its way back to Earth. And today that booster is headed towards our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, which is currently stationed in the Pacific. Now, coming up next, the truss structure next to the vehicle, known as the Strongback or the transporter erector, will start to retract. And in preparation for
retract has started.
So in preparation for retraction, the clamp arms around that second stage will open, and then the Strongback will begin to recline away from the vehicle. You can see them start to open now, just underneath the payload fairing. Once those are out of the way, then the Strongback can recline back away from the vehicle and give it room for liftoff. Now that those clamp arms are fully open, the rocket is fully free at the top.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Pogo.
And we just heard that call out that liquid oxygen loading for the first stage has finished, which finalizes propellant loading for the booster. At T-minus 2 minutes and 42 seconds, all systems are currently a go for an on-time liftoff. Rideshare missions like today's significantly increase access to space for small satellite operators around the world, and we're excited to be able to offer these launch opportunities for our customers. In addition to helping drive down the cost of access to space by flying reusable vehicles, dedicated rideshare flights provide small satellite operators competitive pricing, increased flight opportunities, and flexibility. Overall, SpaceX's rideshare program has enabled our customers to iterate on their technologies and grow at scale. There are all types of spacecraft on these missions. Everything from payloads for the US government, to constellation deployments, to technology demonstrators, to re-entry vehicles. We've also seen several countries launch their first spacecraft ever on board transporter missions, tons of student efforts, and even a father-daughter CubeSat project.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And there we heard that the liquid oxygen for the second stage is now fully loaded, completing prop load for the upper stage. And for more information on SpaceX's
Ground gas closeouts.
For more information on SpaceX's rideshare program, visit spacex.com/rideshare.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
At this point, the autonomous flight computers have taken over the launch countdown, and stages 1 and 2 are pressurizing for launch.
Launch director, go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff, Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Transporter 16.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
At T plus 30 seconds into flight, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Space Launch Complex 4 East at Vandenberg Space Force Base. We're currently throttling down to prepare for max Q, which is the point of maximum aerodynamic stresses on the
Power and
vehicle.
telemetry nominal.
Max Q is reached when the air density of the atmosphere decreases faster than the increasing speed of the rocket.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
So now we're just waiting to hear that call out for max Q.
Max Q.
And there was our call out. So Merlin engines are back at full power and we're out of the throttle bucket. From here on, even though velocity is rapidly increasing, the atmospheric density is decreasing, resulting in less loads on Falcon 9. And coming up next, we'll have several events happening in quick succession, starting with MECO, followed by stage separation, and second engine
MVAC
start,
chill.
and second engine start, or SES-1. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, is where all 9 Merlin 1D engines shut down to slow the vehicle down in preparation for stage separation, which is where the first stage separates from the second stage. Then the MVAC engine on the second stage will light, which is called out as Second Engine Start 1, or SES-1. This engine burn, lasting several minutes, will propel the second stage and our payloads to orbit. After that, the fairing will jettison from the second stage, as it's no longer needed to protect those payloads once we're in space. So we should be hearing the first of these callouts in just a few moments.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
And there you heard and saw those 3 events that happened back to back, including main engine cutoff, stage separation, and second engine start 1. Coming up next will be fairing separation.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there we heard confirmation of fairing separation along with a great view of those two halves separating from the vehicle on your screen. And as a reminder, those fairings will be making their way back to Earth for recovery. The next major milestone coming up is entry burn on our Falcon 9 first stage, which is scheduled to occur around the T+6 minute mark. The entry burn is used to slow the first stage as it heads back towards our drone ship. Of course, I still love you.
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
We're currently in our first MVAC burn, and this burn should last for another few minutes. And the next milestone will be the first stage entry burn, coming up in about 2 minutes. Now today, Falcon 9 is performing 2 burns in order to land. The first burn, known as the entry burn, slows the vehicle down before hitting the denser parts of Earth's atmosphere. And without this burn, we'd only be using the atmospheric drag to slow down Falcon 9, which would add extra stress to the vehicle. And then following entry burn, the booster will initiate the landing burn, which should slow the vehicle down even more for a successful land landing. When Falcon 9 fires up the center M1D engine for re-entry, the vehicle will be flying through Merlin's exhaust gases, also known as the rocket's plume, which deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle surface. And you'll see these marks across the flight-proven Falcon 9 first stage fleet. That soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses, and with each flight, the soot builds up a little bit more on the outside of the vehicle. And the first stage supporting today's mission is making its 12th flight right now. It previously launched the SDA-T1TLB and SDA-T1TLC missions, as well as 9 Starlink missions. We're under a minute away from the start of the entry burn on the Falcon 9 first stage. And you can check out the telemetry on the bottom of your screen. And we can see that that second stage is still picking up speed and heading towards its destined orbit. So we are coming up now on the beginning of the entry burn. You should see the graphics light up as the engines do on the bottom of your screen.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1, FTS safe.
And there was the call out for the entry burn startup on the Falcon 9 first stage. This burn is set to last about 25 seconds and again is slowing the vehicle down in preparation for its final burn and landing.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And that concludes our entry burn. As mentioned earlier, we will be attempting to recover this booster, and today that booster is targeting a landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. You can follow along with the burn in the engine graphic at the bottom of your screen. And as the burn happens, you'll notice a decrease in both speed and altitude. And then during the landing burn, we are expecting the shutdown of the second stage MVAC engine. This is known as Second Engine Cutoff 1 or SECA 1. We're still around 30 seconds away from the beginning of that landing burn. Again, this is the final burn of the Falcon 9 first stage.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Before landing on our drone ship.
Stage 1 landing burn.
And there you heard that call out for landing burn start on the Falcon 9 first stage. Again, this is the final burn that this booster will execute before touching down.
MVAC shutdown.
Stage
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Stage 2 FTS safe.
And as you saw and probably heard, we had a successful first stage landing and successful cutoff of our second stage engine and the call out for good orbit. So coming up next, we have the second burn of our MVAC engine on board the second stage, or SES-2, around the T plus 51 minute mark. And then the first batch of deployments today will begin at about T plus 54 minutes. We'll be back at about T plus 50 minutes to bring you live coverage of SES-2. So until then, enjoy our space tracks, and we'll see you soon.
So far a successful start to the Transporter 16 mission. We'll be sticking with SpaceX's live coverage of the ongoing mission and the deployment of 112 payloads from the payload adapter on the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. The second stage completed its first burn a short while ago, and this current coast phase lasts for 43 minutes and 21 seconds. There'll be a short 4-second burn on the second stage Merlin vacuum engine. That will set the stage for the deployments of the first satellites about 3 minutes after the completion of the burn. The entire mission spans about 2.5 hours, and we'll try to stay with this so that you can follow the ongoing mission and the deployment of the multitude of international payloads on this particular Falcon 9. Wanted to give a big thank you to K2 Hat for a $2 super chat that came in shortly before launch. Sorry we didn't get to that before liftoff. We certainly appreciate any support that our viewers are able to give us to continue our coverage. Most of our efforts today are getting ready for the Artemis 2 launch scheduled for Wednesday. Liftoff of the Space Launch System rocket and the Orion capsule is scheduled at the opening of the launch window Wednesday at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's 22:24 UTC. So be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, hit the subscribe button so that you will not miss any of our live coverage of this historic mission to send 4 astronauts around the moon and back. The first in a new wave of human space exploration that NASA is proposing. Recently outlined its plans for a moon base. And you can find videos that explain all of those plans on the channel. Returning to the Transporter 16 mission. We're now 13 minutes into the flight. You can see the second stage here on the tracking map heading out over the Pacific Ocean. on that trajectory that known as a sun-synchronous orbit. The first satellite to be deployed, known as the Cake Topper, is the Gravitas satellite from K2 Space. It's the largest satellite aboard, weighing 2 metric tons. Take a look at the stack of payloads that are aboard this Falcon 9. Doesn't quite show the Gravitas satellite that I mentioned earlier. However, you can see that satellite here in this image, courtesy of K2 Space, with members of its project team on either side of it. Once the solar panels, which you can see folded concertina style on each side of the spacecraft there in this image, once those are deployed, it will have a wingspan of 40 meters. Those solar arrays are capable of generating 20 kilowatts of electricity. The company says it built 85% of this satellite in-house, not only including those solar arrays, but the propulsion system, batteries, and the reaction wheels they use to orient the craft. This is a test mission. They're hoping to raise the orbit of the satellite to approximately 2,000 kilometers so that they can test the performance of these satellite components in the higher radiation environment that it will encounter in that orbit. Meanwhile, the Falcon 9 continuing on its path across the Pacific Ocean. Traveling in darkness currently. The next milestone is that second burn of the second stage, which is coming up in a little over 30 minutes. So stay tuned. We'll be back with more coverage when SpaceX fires up that second stage engine. It'll be followed by the start of the payload deployments. If you're just joining us, you're watching live coverage of the Transporter 16 mission. Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California at 7:02 a.m. Pacific time this morning. Sorry, 4:02 Pacific time, 7:02 Eastern time, and is currently in a sun-synchronous orbit. We're still awaiting the next burn of the second stage of the Falcon 9. That's coming up in less than 24 minutes from now. It'll be a short 4-second burn. Following that, we'll see the start of payload deployments. The second stage on the Falcon 9 is equipped with the long-duration mission configuration. Noticeable in the pre-launch video as a gray band around the second stage of the rocket that helps keep the propellants at the correct temperature, the kerosene in particular, which could freeze without the addition of that material on the outside of the second stage. This is a long mission for the Falcon 9. The final satellite deployment is scheduled 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 56 seconds after launch. There will also be a total of 4 burns of that second stage engine to place these satellites in precisely the right orbit. You can see on the tracking map, the Falcon 9 is approaching the coast of Antarctica. As it continues on this sun-synchronous orbit. These are roughly a polar orbit, but slightly tilted. That enables satellites to pass over the same local solar time at any point around the world. Provides consistent lighting for not only the generation of solar power, but also if a particular satellite is performing Earth observation tasks, the lighting will be the same each day. Today's launch was the 12th flight for this particular Falcon 9 booster, which has the tail number B1093. That first stage successfully landed on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. That touchdown came about 8.5 minutes into the flight. The booster that lifted off with the Transporter 16 mission previously flew on the Space Development Agency's Tranche 1 missions. It launched 2 batches of satellites for that US military program back in September and October of last year. But primarily, this particular Falcon 9 has been doing Starlink delivery runs from Vandenberg. It entered service in April 2025 and has launched a total of 9 Starlink missions. So this is its first mission for SpaceX's rideshare program. You can see that second stage of the Falcon 9 passing across Antarctica right now, currently in darkness, but heading towards the terminator. The second set of lines that you see in this view are the planned second orbit for this mission. You can see the blue line, which represents the path that the Falcon 9 will take if there are no more burns on the second stage. The white line is the intended orbit for the vehicle, so you can see the adjustment that will be made with that 4-second burn of the second stage. That burn once again coming up 51 minutes and 40 seconds approximately into the mission. It's about 16 minutes from now. We're now 41 minutes into this flight of a Falcon 9 rocket with the Transporter 16 mission. The Falcon 9 has completed its traverse of the continent of Antarctica and is starting to make its way out across the South Atlantic. Next major milestone is that burn of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage, 4-second burn. It's coming up in 9 minutes. We'll be listening in to hear SpaceX's calls and commentary when we get to that moment. And we'll see the start of the payload deployments. That's coming up at around about 54.5 minutes into the mission. Total of 112 payloads on this mission. Those will be deployed over the course of the next 2 hours. We'll be staying with our coverage to bring you, hopefully, video as those deployments take place. Actually, a correction to my earliest statement. The Falcon 9 actually heading out over the Southern Ocean and then into the Indian Ocean, not the Southern Atlantic. Its trajectory will take it close to the island of Madagascar. And as the Falcon 9 second stage comes into range of ground stations, most likely in South Africa, we're getting views looking up from the second stage. Well, briefly, we got some views of the payloads. We're going to listen in to SpaceX.
Welcome back to our live coverage of the Transporter 16 mission. It's been a great launch and overall mission so far. We had an on-time liftoff at 4:02 a.m. Pacific, and we recovered the first stage on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, for its 12th launch and landing. And we had a successful first burn of the MVAC engine on our second stage. Following that, stage 2...
MVAC ignition. MVAC shutdown.
And there was confirmation of a successful second burn of the MVAC engine on the second stage.
Nominal orbit.
And confirmation of good orbit. And with that burn complete, we are expecting to start our first wave of payload deployments shortly.
Well, that burn came much earlier and was much shorter than SpaceX advertised. We'll continue to listen in as the payload deploys come up, which may also be earlier than the advertised times.
There are 119 payloads on today's flight, including CubeSats, microsats, hosted payloads, a re-entry vehicle, and orbital transfer vehicles, carrying 8 of those payloads to be deployed at a later time. We're expecting a total of 82 separate deployment events today, and for this first batch coming up, we're expecting 49 deployments.
Continue to listen in to SpaceX, but be ready for the deployment of the satellites, potentially earlier than shown.
So these payloads will individually separate from Falcon 9's second stage, one right after the other, and we should hear callouts as the payloads are being deployed.
Could occur earlier than on the SpaceX published timeline and the on-screen graphics. So keep an eye out for those payload deployments, and we should hear calls from SpaceX confirming each deployment. Total of 119.
Right now
payloads.
We have some beautiful views of the Earth if you look underneath our payload stack.
Luna 2, separation confirmed.
There we have it, a little earlier than expected.
Femto 1, separation confirmed. Jack 2, separation confirmed. Decimal Sat 1, Vega Fly 1, Hades Spinny 1, separation confirmed. Hermes 1, separation confirmed. Virion 2, separation confirmed. Cosmo, separation confirmed.
Got a glimpse of one of those
Hermes 2,
satellites.
separation confirmed.
This all happening off the coast, the east coast of Africa.
TES 23, separation confirmed. PeakSat, separation confirmed.
SAILY, separation confirmed.
Hermes 3, separation confirmed. Bro 19, separation confirmed. OptiSat, separation confirmed. Paris TX, separation confirmed.
These deployments all happening about a minute ahead of the published schedule. Next up should be the
T Microsat 2, separation confirmed. Spock, separation confirmed. Virion 1, separation confirmed. Disco 2, separation confirmed. Sarja Sat 2, separation confirmed. Phobos, separation confirmed. SM 1.2, separation confirmed.
It's about another 10 minutes of deployments ahead in this particular batch of satellites.
Harbinger, separation confirmed. Out of the box, separation confirmed. NewSat 54, separation confirmed. Emisar, Igonsat, Troop F3, separation confirmed. Lilium 4, separation confirmed.
We're an hour into the mission.
IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-9, separation confirmed. IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-13, separation confirmed. ASAT 4, separation confirmed. IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-9, separation confirmed. IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-13, separation confirmed. Ghost Rider, separation confirmed. IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-10, separation confirmed. IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-16, separation confirmed.
Approaching 35 deployments so far.
IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-11, separation confirmed.
Some of those deployments are of multiple payloads.
Dream Big Constellation, separation confirmed. Innosat Unamuno, separation confirmed.
Still another 5 minutes in this deployment sequence ahead. About 12 more deployments coming up in this sequence.
IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-12, separation confirmed. IRIDE MS1, Eaglet 2-15, separation confirmed.
Spectacular views over the Middle East as the Falcon 9 travels close to the Red Sea.
FGN 100D3, separation confirmed. Momentous, Vigoride 7, Nomad Ride, separation confirmed. Hotsat 2, separation confirmed. NewSat 53, separation confirmed. Hawk 14A, separation confirmed.
About 5 more deployments coming up in this particular batch. There's about an hour gap before the next batch.
Spacefan 2, separation confirmed. Varda's W6, separation confirmed.
It sounds like that was the Varda Space re-entry bus. Just deployed. Starting to see views of the Mediterranean. Might be the Nile, the Red Sea below.
Ion, SCV, Astounding, Alexandra, separation confirmed. Hawk 14B, separation confirmed.
One more deployment coming up. SpaceX might be between ground stations here. You have to wait for confirmation of that deployment. There's about a 30-minute coast ahead. Not heard confirmation of that final deployment, but we did see something drifting away in that brief video from the second stage cameras. Falcon 9 crossing the Black Sea and about to cross into Ukraine as it heads towards the Arctic. Continue to listen in for any more word from SpaceX. Transporter 16 carrying a total of 119 payloads. We should have had the first batch deployed.
Hawk 14C, separation confirmed.
And there we go. We got confirmation from SpaceX of that final deployment in that sequence. There's more to come. Probably now coming within range of ground stations in Norway or Sweden, Finland perhaps.
And with that call out for deployment, that brings us to the close of our first deployment sequence. For now, we're going to coast until the third MVAC relight, or SES-3, which should occur at about T plus 1 hour and 41 minutes. So until then,
So close to 50 payloads deployed in that first batch. Looking at the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage of the Falcon 9. We got about 27 minutes before the next burn of this engine. It was scheduled to be a 2-second burn, but things not closely following the timeline that SpaceX published prior to the mission. So we'll have to wait and see exactly when and how long that burn will be. The Transporter 16 mission is part of SpaceX's rideshare program. The company currently offers 3 different types of rideshare missions. The Transporter missions, which have flown from both the West Coast, as today's launch was, and also from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The first transporter mission came in 2021. And obviously, as this mission name suggests, this is the 16th of those transporter missions going to a sun-synchronous orbit. That's a near-polar orbit and allows payloads to pass over the surface of the Earth at the same local solar time, meaning the lighting remains constant. It's a very useful orbit for imaging satellites, as you always have the same lighting conditions on the ground. Also provides good sunlight for the generation of electrical power through solar arrays. SpaceX also offers its bandwagon missions, which go to a mid-inclination orbit of about 45 degrees. The first of those bandwagon missions took place in 2024. And so far, there have been 3 of those missions. Sorry, 4 of those missions. The most recent flew from Cape Canaveral in November last year. In addition, SpaceX flew a mission that it called Twilight back in January of this year. That went to a special sun-synchronous orbit known as a dawn-dusk sun-synchronous orbit. And that's where the orbit closely follows the terminator between night and day, allows satellites to still receive sunlight to generate power, but also to look at the dark side of the Earth or towards space, where there's no interference from sunlight. And as you can see from the tracking map, the Falcon 9 second stage is now heading towards the Arctic region. Passing just west of the island of Svalbard. Looks like its trajectory will take it across the very northernmost tip of Greenland. We're now 1 hour, 20 minutes into this mission. The Falcon 9 lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base at 4:02 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. This was SpaceX's 39th Falcon 9 launch of the year. They're getting ready for the 40th later today from Cape Canaveral. The Starlink 10-44 mission, currently scheduled for 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll bring you live coverage of that launch from the Cape. The full team will be in action for that particular mission. Be sure to follow the Spaceflight Now team on their social media channels. It's going to be a very busy day at the Cape with remote camera setups. As we get ready for the Artemis II launch from Kennedy Space Center on Wednesday. So be sure to follow events, but we'll take a pause in our preparations for Artemis II to cover that Starlink launch. Once again, currently the window opens at 5:15 p.m. That launch had been delayed due to poor conditions in the Atlantic Ocean where the booster recovery vessel would have been stationed. It had to take shelter in port along with the fairing recovery vessel. So the window opens at 5:15 for that launch, but there might be some adjustment to that. We're always hoping for a launch around sunset, as those are always spectacular. So stay tuned for any updates on the T0 for that mission. One hour, 25 minutes into the flight of the Transporter 16 mission. Coming up next is the third burn of the second stage of the Falcon 9. It's about 16 minutes away. So stay tuned. We'll listen in to SpaceX commentary and the ground team as they give call-outs for the ignition and hopefully the good orbit insertion. You can see in this orbit track the current orbit and the next orbit. The blue line is the orbit should there not be any adjustment. And you can see how the two lines on the next orbit diverge. Those should come together. Getting views now, once again, from the Falcon 9. Presumably the second stage has come into range of tracking stations in Alaska. Looked like the Falcon 9 was approaching the Alaska and Yukon Territory of Canada. Yeah, beautiful shot of the Earth below with the terminator between night and day. Sun low on the horizon from the Falcon 9's point of view. We're 90 minutes into the flight of the Falcon 9. That next burn coming up in about 11 minutes. Should be a 2-second burn, but as we've noted earlier, there have been some deviations from the pre-published flight plan. Quite possibly because the T0 shifted into the window. It was a 57-minute window, I believe. And SpaceX chose to target 4:02 a.m. Pacific time. The window actually opened at 3:10 Pacific time. So that might explain some of the differences in the timeline that we've seen, also reflected by SpaceX's on-screen graphics. So don't rely on those either. Great view of the sun approaching the terminator and the glow of the Earth's atmosphere. See if the sun actually sets from the Falcon 9's perspective. Really get a sense of how thin the Earth's atmosphere is. That slither of light comes through. Something the astronauts note frequently, and we're getting a chance to see for ourselves here. Quite a spectacular orbital sunset we're getting treated to between the last deployment sequence and the next burn coming up. Sadly, it looks like Falcon 9's passed out of range of those ground stations in Alaska. Oh, here we go, back with that sunset. Hopefully we hangs on. A beautiful view there of the sun disappearing below the horizon from the point of view of the Falcon 9. The Earth's atmosphere still glowing as the Falcon 9 moves away from the terminator between night and day. Falcon 9 heading out over the Pacific. It's like we're out of range of the ground stations. We may get video again from potentially from the tracking stations on the West Coast. There we are. Still seeing that glow of the atmosphere. You can see where this mission began on the Central California coast. Nice view of the payloads, the remaining payloads. 119 in total on this mission. Got less than 5 minutes before the next burn of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. We should soon start to see the chill down of that engine as the Falcon 9 performs its thermal conditioning to ready it for this planned 2-second burn. Looks like that might be the moon there in this shot looking up at the payload adapter. That thin crescent of the Earth's atmosphere in the background when we get the engine views, which toggle from one side to the other. Starting to see that chill down sequence. See some venting from the Merlin vacuum engine. This will be the third of four burns for the upper stage. According to the timeline, this burn's coming up in now less than 2 minutes. We'll tune in to SpaceX audio as soon as they resume their coverage. You'll see that burn appearing on the timeline now. Once again, for those of you just joining, you're watching live coverage of the Transporter 16 mission Coming up is a short burn of the Falcon 9 second stage. Just be prepared for it to happen earlier than advertised on the graphics on screen.
Live coverage of the Transporter 16 mission. If you're just joining us, we're continuing to have a great mission today. Just to recap, we had an on-time liftoff at 4:02 a.m. Pacific, recovered our Falcon 9 booster for its 12th landing, and we've completed 2 separate second stage burns. We also saw the first deployment sequence of 49 payloads, and we now have 33 more to go. Coming up shortly is the third relight of our second stage Merlin vacuum engine for a roughly 1 second burn.
MVAC ignition and shutdown.
There we have it. Much closer
Nominal
to the
orbit
timeline.
insertion.
And that's confirmation of a good orbit following our third burn of the MVAC engine on the Falcon 9 second stage. And with that,
So there's now about a 31-minute coast between this burn and another pulse of the Merlin vacuum engine to further refine the orbit before the deployment sequence starts once more. It'll start with the Gravitas satellite built by K2 Space. It's a test satellite to demonstrate a high-power solar array system for satellites. There are more than 30 deployments still to come in this mission. So stay tuned. We'll bring you coverage of that fourth and final burn for the mission itself on the second stage. There will be deorbit burn as well. But as far as the mission is concerned, that will complete the work of the upper stage. And that's coming up in about 28 minutes from now. We're now 1 hour 47 minutes into the flight of the Falcon 9 on the Transporter 16 mission. As you can see, the Falcon 9 is now traveling in darkness across the Pacific Ocean, having passed out of range of tracking stations on the West Coast. While we continue to track the flight of the Falcon 9, our attention very much remains on the Artemis 2 mission coming up on Wednesday. The 45th Weather Squadron has issued their latest forecast for the liftoff, which is planned for Wednesday, the 1st of April at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time. In their forecast, they predict an 80% chance of acceptable weather conditions for the launch. The primary concerns being the cumulus cloud rule and ground winds. They're forecasting winds of 15 to 20 knots. Cumulus clouds scattered at between 3,000 and 13,000 feet. And cirrus clouds at 20 to 24,000 feet. So on the whole, everything looking favorable as far as the weather is concerned for the launch of the Space Launch System rocket with the Orion capsule and its crew of 4 astronauts. Meanwhile, the Falcon 9 continuing its trek across the Pacific Ocean. Be making another pass over Antarctica. So it's now onto its second orbit of Earth. We're now 2 hours into the flight of the Transporter 16 mission. Rideshare flight carrying 119 payloads. Next up is the fourth firing of the second stage engine to refine the orbit that's coming up in about 12 minutes from now. I'll be followed by the deployment of the Gravitas satellite from K2 Space. Falcon 9 second stage with the payload adapter and the remaining spacecraft and payloads aboard is now traveling to the southeast of New Zealand and approaching its second pass over the continent of Antarctica. 2 hours, 8 minutes into flight, and the second stage ground track about to take it across the continent of Antarctica. We're less than 5 minutes away from the next burn of the Berlin vacuum engine and the start of the second deployment sequence. About 30 more deployments still to come in this mission. We're starting to see the chill down of that engine. It looks like it's actually in work.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And there we heard confirmation of that fourth MVAC burn. The next payload deployment should begin in just about 3 minutes. In case you're just tuning in, we had an on-time liftoff at 4:02 a.m. Pacific, and we're...
So coming up next is the deployment of the Gravitas satellite. That's a satellite that will test some of the technologies that is needed for potential data centers in space. very important part of the mission is to test the high-power solar array system. This satellite is capable of producing 20 kilowatts of electricity. And those power demands of in-orbit data centers will be very high. The Gravitas mission has 12 payloads on board, which have not been disclosed, but one of the customers is understood to be the Department of Defense. There's also an electric thruster that will be used to raise the satellite's orbit. That deployment should be coming up in about 2 minutes, but with the earlier burn, it may be sooner than that, and the on-screen graphic, once again, might be off. So stay tuned.
We are about a minute away from our expected Gravitas deployment.
Gravitas satellite should be at the top of the stack here.
Gravitas, separation confirmed.
It's confirmation, but unfortunately the video looking in the wrong direction.
Thanks for flying SpaceX, and we wish you well on your journey. And with that, we have one more wave of deployments coming up, and that is expected to begin at about T+2 hours and 25 minutes. So we'll see you back here after a short break.
So unfortunately, we did not see video from SpaceX of the deployment of the Gravitas satellite. It's quite possible that that was deliberate. The views of the payload stack that were published by SpaceX don't clearly show that satellite, which is the topper, the cake topper on the payload adapter, very top satellite. So it's quite possible that the company requested that SpaceX not show that deployment, which is a shame, as it looked like it would have been quite spectacular as it would have been deployed into the sun there. So with that, about 50 payload deployments now accomplished. Another 30 or so to go. There's a total of 119 payloads on board, but some of those are deployed together and separate at a later stage. So a little difficult to keep track of the numbers. But we should be at or around 50 deployments currently. We are seeing something drifting there behind the nozzle. Of course, that could be a fragment of ice, but it also looks awfully like the pre-flight photos of the Gravitas satellite. So that object just to in the bottom left-hand corner could actually be the Gravitas satellite drifting away there. Here's a view of the Gravitas satellite before the flight. And as you can see, there is very similar looking object drifting away there. So perhaps we do see it in this image. Coming up in less than 5 minutes is the next deployment in this sequence, the Flylab 2, which was manifested by EXO launch for this particular customer. The next deployment of the Flylab 2 is it's a French satellite technology demonstration mission. The Falcon 9's ground track now bringing it close to the coast of South Africa. Now getting views and telemetry via the ground station there. See some of those deployment canisters from EXO launch. Clearly visible with the company logo.
Back to our live coverage of the Transporter 16 mission. We're currently just about a minute away from our final payload deployments for the mission. There are 119 payloads on today's mission, including CubeSats, microsats, hosted payloads, and orbital transfer vehicles, carrying 8 of those payloads to be deployed at a later time. We have already deployed 50, and so that leaves us with 32 to go. As we mentioned earlier, a full list of the payloads on today's mission is available on spacex.com/launches. And in case you're not familiar, our transporter missions are dedicated rideshare flights to sun-synchronous orbit. Falcon 9 is also launching the bandwagon missions, which are a separate line of rideshare missions that deliver spacecraft to
Flylab 2, separation confirmed.
Those deployments coming early again.
Lemur 2, Sejong 3, separation confirmed. GEMS 2, Amethyst, separation confirmed. Black Kite 2, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, Arena, separation confirmed. Unicorn 2R, Unicorn 2S, separation confirmed. Flylab 1, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, Clara, separation confirmed. AE-1A, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, Julia Joel, separation confirmed. N1 Atlas, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, Deloitte 2, separation confirmed. IO-1, separation confirmed. Toro 3, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, Polo 11, separation confirmed. FOSSASat 25, separation confirmed. Lemur 1, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, Peggy 2004, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, Deloitte 3, separation confirmed.
Should be about 13 more deployments ahead.
Lemur 2, MRCS, separation confirmed. ISI 1, separation confirmed.
Great views of the continent of Africa in the background.
Lemur 2, Carolina, separation confirmed. ISI 3, separation confirmed. ISI 5, separation confirmed. Vindler 2.0.2, separation confirmed. CERT 3, separation confirmed. ISI 4, separation confirmed. Acadia 10, separation confirmed. ISI 6, separation confirmed. Vindler 2.0.3, separation confirmed.
Two more to come.
ISI 2, separation confirmed.
Just one more deployment to go.
Vindler 2.0.1, separation confirmed.
All payloads successfully deployed.
Great video there.
And with that
deployment.
confirmation, we've successfully deployed all Transporter 16 payloads. It has been a long mission, but it's been so worth it to see all of those CubeSats, microsats, and orbital transfer vehicles now in space. We would like to thank all of our rideshare customers for entrusting us with their spacecraft today. And we also want to say thank you to the Range and Federal Aviation Administration for their support, and to you, our viewers. To date, SpaceX has launched more than 1,600 payloads to orbit across our entire rideshare program, and there are lots more to come.
So we're nearing the conclusion of our coverage here. We'll have our mission stats coming up shortly, but we'll stay with these views until SpaceX cuts away. So with what appears to be a successful conclusion of the Transporter 16 mission, we'll see how the numbers stack up following the final spacecraft separation. Taking a look at our stats here. This was the 12th flight for Falcon 9 booster 1093, which entered the SpaceX fleet about a year ago in April. and has pretty much flown once a month on average since then. Its last mission was 33 days ago when it launched the Starlink 17-26 mission. This is the 621st Falcon 9 launch to date, the 39th Falcon 9 of the year, and the 555th Falcon 9 booster reflight. Using our rolling 365 metric, this is the 169th SpaceX Orbital launch in the last 365 days. The 189th Orbital SpaceX launch from Slick 4 East at Vandenberg, and the 257th overall orbital launch from that pad. Take a look at our bar chart. You can see that SpaceX is already up to 39 launches this year, and you can see how that stacks up against the previous flights of the Falcon 9. Turning to our recovery stats, it was the 187th landing on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. It was the 489th SpaceX drone ship landing, the 592nd booster landing in total, including those on the landing zones at Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg. And this is the 593rd overall booster landing, including the landing of the New Glenn booster on its second flight last year, earlier this year, maybe. The 20th orbital launch from California, the 41st orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 46th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, and the 70th orbital launch attempt globally. There have been 4 orbital launch failures, and here's a look at our bar chart as far as how the various countries are stacking up, with the U.S. taking the lion's share, with SpaceX accounting for most of those U.S. launches, with ULA and Rocket Lab also counted in that total. So with that, we'll conclude our coverage of the Transporter 16 mission. But don't go too far from your YouTube screen, because coming up later today is the launch of the Starlink 10-44 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Currently, that launch window opens at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time, 21:15 UTC. But there might be an adjustment to that T0. May go a little bit into the window. We'll have to wait and see. So stay tuned to Spaceflight Now on social media. We'll let you know if there's a change in that upcoming launch. Also, be sure to continue to follow the preparations for the Artemis 2 launch. You can see views of that rocket on our 24/7 Artemis live stream. We're also carrying views on our Launchpad live stream as well. So you can keep tabs on NASA's preparations for that launch and SpaceX's next Falcon 9 launch, its 40th of the year, throughout today. So I want to just thank you all for joining us, and special thanks to Cumulus Granatus, who was in our chat answering questions this morning. And we look forward to seeing you back here later. For the launch of the Starlink 10-44 mission. I'm Stephen Young, reporting for Spaceflight Now. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.